Welcome to our event today, a celebration of the award of the prestigious Rooney Prize for Irish Literature to Dr. Niamh Campbell. I'm delighted to introduce Niamh, who is our colleague in the Department of English at Maynooth University. Niamh Campbell's debut novel, This Happy, was published in 2020 and nominated for the Kate O'Brien Award, the Ann Post Irish Book Awards, the John McGahern Book Prize, and the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year Award. In 2020, she also won the Sunday Times Audible Short Story Award for her story, Love Many. She is also the author of the monograph Sacred Weather, Atmospheric Essentialism in the Work of John McGahern. Her second novel, We Were Young, is forthcoming with Weidenfeld and Nicolson in February 2022. In addition to lecturing at Maynooth University in the Department of English, she is a current writer-in-residence at UCD. Niamh will be reading from her forthcoming novel, We Were Young. Niamh.
Thank you, Rita. If everybody can hear me okay. I'm actually reading to a room of people, so I'm going to face this direction. I'm going to read from my second novel, We Were Young, because I'm sort of a bit tired of reading from This Happy, and I want to road test it. So this is a segment from close to the beginning when I'm introducing the character. The protagonist is a Cormac. He is in his late 30s. He's an artist and he's an academic. And he's single, but sort of cycling through a lot of different affairs with people at various times at the same time, and kind of just living in a kind of liminal world, which is an artistic and bohemian world that overlaps with sort of the practicalities of trying to make a living as an artist and so on. And it's intended in being somewhere between a comedy of manners and the examination of a personality. So I've chosen this scene because it's sort of self-sustained, and you don't really need to know too much about the book to understand it. And I hope that you enjoy it. So this is a flashback to when he returned to Dublin from being abroad in London for a couple of years, and after the death of his father. And the defining event in Cormac's life has been the death of his brother when he was a teenager in a drug-related accident. And his family are a little bit dysfunctional, sort of following on for that. But this is about returning to Dublin and starting to get settled back into some kind of, I suppose, clique or community. When he first moved back to the city 2 years before, Alice phoned out of nowhere and asked, "Is this your number? This is still your number, yes?" "No, it's someone else." "Would you like a gig?" "Depends. Rehearsal shots for on Trial. It's in Irish. The photographs will not be in Irish," she said. "But if you don't want money, that's fine. If you want to starve and stay in your mother's box room, that's fine." "I'm not in a box room," he was laughing. "I have a place in town." He took the commission and cycled to one of the Georgian buildings on Parnell Square. It had been a council chambers for Fingal, and Cormac said on learning this, "Oh, whoa, I'm from Fingal." No one responded to this or asked him anything. Alice only introduced the actors and left. The building was being restored. Downstairs, corridors were diffused by pale terrazzo and smelled of Dettol, flower water, candle wax, smelled like primary school, and spindly stairs turned beneath a carriage clock. On the first floor, a huge room lined with mahogany was fitted with ancient benches and stalls, the table inlaid with leather at the centre, everything shining in ghoulish puce. It looked like a nightmare from the 18th century. It looked like a ghost story by Sheridan Le Fanu. "It's incredible, isn't it?" the actors cooed. Every chair in the place was mighty and spiked. Every surface was polished but dark as wine, finished with shamrocks and sigils and unicorns. The ambience was red, of red wood, cabernet, hound's blood, so that it pulsed or ached an auric, hellish red. Cormac had a sense that every lacquered dresser, every holy parlour of his life had been aspiring to look like this nightmare room. A pale girl sat in the dock for her photographs and gazed at a velvet curtain. The actor playing the cad posed in a judge's throne with a halo of carvings above his head. He looked insouciantly up. He looked when Cormac was reloading between Cormac's legs. Cormac remembers it partly because the commission led to work and further work. It was the first movie made towards staying in Dublin, but mostly because of the crush of the room. The shock of its age enclosed him with intimacy, aching with an opulence he found freakish and stimulating. It comes down to atmospheres, trying to decant and describe atmospheres. This is life. As he took more pictures just of the room this time, the actors chattered and dispersed. The air of sexual intrigue about them was more boring than they knew. Pretty soon he was by himself, looking down on the mundanity of Parnell Street from a window with panes that felt cold and friable like slate. Happy, or at least awake. It had been some time. Alice arrived at 5 and there was hope in her eyes, a surprising openness. He thought of this as her mother look, even though it predated her becoming mother, which she had at 25. He told her, "It's absolutely beautiful upstairs, come and see. I've seen it before. It's for hanging judges," he said, "the 4 horsemen. Landlords shot with muskets on the way back from a league meeting." He said, "It reminds me of my old school. There's a lot of history to it, yes." Alice was smiling at him, weakly or lovingly now, his enthusiasm. He could have reached out and touched her cheek. She might have responded erotically. "If you stay," she promised, "you'll be working almost all the time. Your reputation is sound and I have a lot of contacts I can share." "All shucks. Whenever you like," she said, ungrateful runt. He dreamt of it, the chamber of wine-coloured shadows, regularly, somewhere between kidney stones and a poem. Wakes in the darkness with a white shoulder turned away, thinking of the old English word utkara, or dawn sorrow, not only because of the blue hour in the 2 chastely separate panes, but because he learned utkara from a theatre director after the opening night of On Trio. It was at the Pavilion. Alice introduced them, gathered with others in a restaurant with deal tables scrubbed to the colour of buttermilk and 3 options only on the menu: clams, haddock, pig. "Do you smoke?" the director asked, leaning back on the communal bench to shout around the narrow shoulders of the Times editor between them. "No," Cormac apologised. "Well, if I'm drunk." "We'll drink up and come out then," the director said. They stood by a halogen lamp on the street. It was dark and growing turbulent at sea, with wind ripping over the pier and shaking the rigging audibly. Gory locks, he thought randomly, weirdly. "Shake your gory locks at me." And this wind also pulled at the awning of the restaurant. It made noises everywhere. People still promenaded with umbrellas bent against it in the dark. The director was Cormac's own age and dark-haired, broad but of average height, impatient with the play and with the insincere talk inside. "Nobody speaks the language," he complained. "Ah, but there's a libretto." "Fuck it just gets funded," the director laughed. "To write in Irish," he said. "The Times guy is over from London. No, not for this, just generally. I know him." "Do you know him?" The director dropped a name. "Oh, sort of, vaguely," Cormac realised. "I went out with one of his sisters." "You did? Long time ago. Art school." "Funny," the director squinted. Alice said, "Oh, both ways," Cormac assured him chipperly. His voice sounded over-earnest, but he had been back a mere matter of weeks, and it was lonely. The director had spoken at length over haddock and or clams, about a fascist countess you could stay with in Spain, the widow of a Francoist with a grand house that she rented for residencies. He'd spoken with so much ire, Cormac knew he was nervous. "Little leather florets on her shoes," the director insisted. "Little leathery florets." He half goose-stepped beneath the table angrily. His sneering was ugly, but also touchingly adolescent. Now, standing outside, he stooped somewhat to smoke, hungrily. When Cormac said both ways, the director burst into surprised laughter and said, "Tonight I have to travel all the way back to Louth. I'm staying in this place." He bowed and turned away and looked fretfully towards the harbour, the pier, the promenade, clanging, ringing, carried everywhere. It was strange. Cormac felt sadistically confident. "Can I come?" he asked. "No," the director snapped. More gently then, "Not tonight." It had been some time. Cormac set out the following evening. The director picked him up in a stale, unwieldy car, smoking once again. Fresh smoke, spicy with the gloom of older, layered smoke at Dundalk train station. "This place is pretty strange," he warned. "I'm minding it. I'm a kind," he continued, "of ornamental hermit." He was stooping again, his hair extremely black, and his clothes more casually aristocratic this time. A linen shirt, loose, pale slacks. He was big-eared and heavy-lidded and sexy, and there was something rustic to his looks at odds with the bohemian dress, the obvious stress and impatience with which he floored it through back roads and narrow lanes, the fey gesture with which he held up an eternal cigarette. I'm on an adventure, Cormac thought. Why haven't we already met? I've been away, Cormac said, and anyway, I'm hardly on the scene these days. You're pals with Alice, though. A long time. You know, art school. A great woman. She told me to take you out. She said you're sad. Cormac absorbed the lie with new solicitude. The man was nervous again. She's right, she said. I'm very sad. He asked, where are you from? Durham. Now the man barked, here we are. They turned into a long drive, lined with darkening trees, that wound around the landscape green and opened before a turreted country house. It looked vacant and foreboding or demented, as all ascendancy architecture ends up appearing. The turrets were kind of insane. Whoa, Cormac contributed. I'm in the stables. Yes, for real, the owner is a tech guy from California. He likes opera. I'm going to write about it, the place I mean. The director parked the car before a stable house with stalls taken out and smoothed over. It was smaller than the big house, but still elegantly unusual. Yellow light trumpeting out at a large window over the double doors, luxury. After the engine, it was quiet, but as they stepped out into the still evening, Cormac heard all around the menacing and collective kvetching of rooks. Spooky, he offered this time, stupidly. Oh, you get used to it, the director said. The director's cock kinked upwards and tasted of soap scum. His body was formed solidly, not in a way that suggested labour, but rather some inborn earthiness or genetic eloquence. This kind of body was rare and, to Cormac, fascinating. It was a big brother, older boy body, father body, thatched with black hair, nipples spaced apart. There was a huge half moon outside the window as they fucked. Afterwards, the director lay smoking and gestured to the remote rafters overhead, gaping and accumulating shade like the ceiling of a cathedral. A dream I hear horses, he told Cormac, and smell horses. I think it's haunted by horses. Do you want to sleep? Yes, Cormac sighed. He pushed the heels of his hands into his eye sockets and yawned. It's been some time. Me too, the director said quietly. In the blue hour then, the first light, they were woken by cold, and the pallet bed was fragrantly close to the floor, like a planter or something more notionally ghoulish, a grave. And feeling him stir, the director spooned him from behind in a gesture of surprising affection or predation, spoiled by the whisper of, are you sad? Are you feeling sad? It was so absurd, Cormac didn't reply. He wondered why he was being mocked when they were both here, both awake, on the floor of a stable, behind one of the many grand houses a person working in a provincial art scene tends to encounter. The ancestral homes and piles and fantastic albatrosses, directionless heiresses and tech guys from California, of the patron class. Cormac had watched people injure themselves by falling off garden statues after midnight in midsummer, seen handbag designers streak hysterically through a bushy garden maze, cycled for champagne and DMT up the drive of a horn-rimmed country house, outside which someone had graffitied robber barons, really, literally that, so that the squire's son had left it there out of mirth and complex gilded leftism. If being mocked was a prelude to sex, it felt depressingly like something a girl would go through. But the director said with sudden kindness in Cormac's ear, at this time of day you wake up lonely because it's instinctive. There's even an old English word for it, utkra. It means dawn sorrow. I remember it because of UHT, ut, like UHT milk, like milk sorrow, because I think dawn and milk go together. It sounded prepared, but it was beautiful. Say it again, Cormac said, utkra, milk and dawn. Don't know where I get that from. Cows and dawns and farms, I suppose, Cormac said. The director struck him as tenderly English in that minute. English like the foolish-seeming flatness of farmland when you leave St. Pancras in a northerly direction by train. English like all shall be well and all shall be well. English like a chapel in Surrey we saw with wooden saints remaining with their eyes which had been pearls were genied out. English like a saint named Pancras. Cormac experienced an expansive sense of political empathy and rolled over to take the king's solid quality of the cock in his hand, his lips roughened by a night of side-by-side dehydration. Felt a jaw pressing back too passionately out of advantage in the way people do when they know that they might not see you again. This made Cormac feel superior in the instant because he understood himself as genial company, as relatively effervescent, as capable these days of living in a city and tolerating people, not hacking out to the countryside for elegance and misery. The first months after Alva, the months spent panicking in his mother's house, were fading now. Oh yes, it was possible. All manner of things could be well. He wanted to leave shortly after, and though he did not say so, the director knew. Cormac felt the shaming vibrations of the other man's awkwardness. Extending empathy, once again he asked, "Can you show me the house? Or will they not be awake?" "They won't be awake, but I'll show you," the director said. Together they entered by a back door, accessed through a kitchen garden, which was frozen and close to the earth. Slight green florets frosted and wadded resiliently. Cormac thought, little leathery florets of the fascist countess with her veal strips and boiling broth, her pendulous flesh, her spiteful conversation, so real to them all as it was sketched over clams and or hake, flies buzzing brutally in the backdrop of her fucking galleria, because the door was left unlocked. The little bloom of cruelty made him feel bad by association. He put his hand on the director's arm and squeezed it as they came into a large kitchen, suggestive of a kitchen in a hotel, with copper pots hanging on the walls like a brass section. An odour of freon and drain water made Cormac think always of his adolescent stint as a kitchen porter, restoring history to him in a single insubstantial stroll. They padded around the ground floor with creaturely care so as not to disturb anyone, passing through a morning room and a dark library and a reception hall with a flowing staircase and brass rods anchoring a thick carpet. In the suspenseful silence, it felt like Christmas morning, everything enchanted.